There's so much to talk about again this week, including there is actually 50 year celebration of Microsoft. 50 years. I can't believe that company is that old. But we'll talk about that. What does that mean? There are some new initiatives being launched, and we'll talk a little bit about that history as well.
Yeah, it'll be some interesting times to talk about Microsoft. As people know, we both work at Microsoft, and I've been around for 25 of those 50 years. So it's time certainly has moved very fast. That is definitely the case. Speaking of fast, I know we've got a lot of different topics to go through. Like some of the highlights that we'll be covering around launch news is really around Runway Labs. They released their Gen-4 video creation model. Amazon, in their Nova Labs, put out a agentic browser control, which they call Nova Act. You mentioned about Microsoft. Microsoft put out a whole slew of new updates for Fabric at FabCon this past week. So we'll be highlighting some of the elements of Fabric that relate to AI. And there's a company I ran across this past week as well called Internet.io. It's interesting, and I'll show you why a little bit later.
And then I'll give you some real example of how GenAI actually has made it tremendous. I was very impressed with one of the use cases of the GenAI, and that was in the training. So all in that and a lot more. Stay tuned. We'll be back after an intro. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Great. So, Jimmy, I talked about the 50 years, and 50 is an important number because, this is our episode 48. I wish we had episode 50 that would have aligned neatly with the Microsoft 50 years today that is being celebrated. I'm also close to 50, so that 50 seems like a really great number right now. But I want to actually talk about today, right, in that code of the week that we do. I want to talk about some of the powerful codes, right, in terms of the Microsoft's mission statements over the years, because it's amazing, right, how those missions have transpired. If you look at it, the very first mission statement that Microsoft had, which was created by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, and they created an ambitious vision, right, for the industry. And they said a computer on every desk and in every home. That's a powerful one. And I think they achieved that, right? I mean, that mission is kind of accomplished, I would say, for most of the population, except not every single person, but still, I think so. That's still ongoing, but to a large extent, it is achieved. And then in 2002, the mission was changed actually, and it was made to, like, quote Steve Ballmer, like, to enable people and businesses throughout the world to realize their full potential, unquote. And that included later technology as well, but that was, you can say, the version 2 of that mission statement. And in 2015, when Satya Nadella, he became the Microsoft CEO, he evolved that mission, and it was coded as to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, unquote. And that's our current mission statement. So 50 years, third mission statement. And I think that the first one, in my view, was the most powerful. And yet, it is something that has been accomplished to a large extent. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, the world is changing so rapidly, and times do have to change with what a mission statement is. I think Microsoft certainly has provided for what was put out in the mission statements, as you mentioned, like the computer on every desk and every home. that certainly has been achieved, or at least for the most part, to enable every person in business. That has been achieved in most part. And when we think about the latest one in terms of empowering every person in every organization on the planet achieve more, certainly there as well. I think things are changing so rapidly as it relates to the way that we're doing work, the way that computers are enabling and assisting us, that these statements are broad enough to capture and cover those. So it's great. It's a bold statement. They're always bold statements, and it aligns with, what I see is what's next. You mentioned it's 50-year celebration of Microsoft. I think what's important to me is, yes, we can look back on those 50 years, but what do the next 50 look like? And that's where I kind of think what makes the most sense as far as the direction of a company. And at least for what Bill Gates and Satya put it there currently today, it's a direction. Obviously Satya is in the control and the helm of Microsoft. He's positioned things where it will meld to whatever the industry is creating at the time, and certainly Microsoft is in a driver's seat for enabling that. Anyway, just pontificating a little bit on a little philosophical as well on thought leadership and company direction and quote unquote 50th celebration of Microsoft.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, like pretty much everybody in the world has used Microsoft's product. And I remember the one of the first book I had read was, and it was very impressive, right? I really admired that book, and that was Bill Gates. I used to remember that, Business at the Speed of Thought. That book was amazing. The way Bill Gates had articulated, the way it portrayed the vision, I love that book. Okay, that inspired me. And then the next book that I read about Microsoft particularly was Hit Refresh, right, from Satya several years ago. And that again, inspired me, right? I mean, that, like, how he has talked about it. So between these two books, a lot has happened. And Jamie, you spent 25 years or 50 years, right? So you think you know Microsoft? I'm going to give you a surprise quiz, and let's see how you do on that quiz, and then we'll know.
I'm not good at quizzes.
I, that quiz will be a good, I would say, uh, nostalgia for many of the people hearing some of those terms. So let's start.
Before I start the quiz, can I use Copilot?
No. This is proctored, Jamie, so I'm watching. Okay, let me ask this. Asking you, but for the benefit of everyone, when was Microsoft first founded, and where was the first headquarters?
1975, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Great. You get 1 point for that because I know you know. Okay. And I'm sure that, I don't know if you were around that time, but what was the internal code name for the Windows 95 before it was launched?
Oh, that's a good one. I wasn't around then. I'm trying to remember what 95 was. I really don't know. I was going to say Vista, but that was the actual next release between 95 and the what was it, Windows 7. So
Yeah,
you stopped me on that one.
and that was actually the main name, right? That was the release name, not the internal code name. The internal code name for Windows 95 during development was Chicago.
Yes.
And I have no idea why Chicago.
The interesting thing on that one, I should remember that. A lot of the code names, at least, and people know me for SQL, a lot of the code names were based upon mountains. So mountains in and around Seattle, like Everest as an example, or not just the mountains around Seattle, but any of the mountains. So anyway, I should remember that.
Okay, and what was the first true graphical operating system?
Was it Windows 3.0, or I don't remember if it was 3.0 or 3.1. I guess it was Windows 3.0. right?
Windows 1.0 actually.
One
That
oh.
was the true, yes. First graphical. But here's what blows my mind, right? The flight simulator was launched before the Windows, Um, I love Flight Simulator. That I've spent like days and hours of my life on that one. My wife hated that, but I love that game. And the other one, the Age of Empires. Those were my
Oh yeah.
favorite, actually, both from Microsoft. Um, Spent a significant portion of my life, I would say, on those two. Um, but here's the thing, another one. Um, you know, the Microsoft has done a lot of acquisitions, right? What are the biggest so far?
Hmm. Um, Biggest acquisition. I was going to say LinkedIn. I don't. Biggest acquisition as far as dollar amounts,
Mm-hmm.
people. Um,
Dollar.
I'm still going to stick with LinkedIn.
Okay, I'm sure that when I say you that you will suddenly remember Activision Blizzard, Jimmy, just
You sure?
recently.
That was that was bigger than LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, $68 billion. LinkedIn was about 26 or something.
Oh wow!
So LinkedIn was, you could say, like second biggest, and I think
You
after
could you
that
could
comes GitHub in terms of the dollar value.
you could tell I'm not a big gamer.
Certainly. But we talk a lot about the AI chatbot, and Microsoft has played with AI chatbot a lot in the past as well. Not very successfully, I would say. Copilot is the most successful, probably, I would say. Um, what was Microsoft's AI chatbot that was pulled within 24 hours due to controversial behavior?
Wasn't it Tay or something? Yeah. But,
That's right. You got some points. Okay. And which year actually Microsoft Azure was launched?
I want to say 2014. Am I in the ballpark?
No, 2014 is when Satya took over. And Satya actually started that platform, Azure, in back in 2010.
Was it 10? Well, all right.
Yeah, I know,
Hmm.
it's surprising, right? I mean, that time I'd never even heard of the word cloud that time, and they were working on it. Um, but yeah, that's amazing. And the first truly successful mouse-based GUI, which one was that?
I'm going to go with my original answer when you asked for the one was the first graphical user interface. I'm going to say Windows 3.0.
That's true. That's true. It is 3.1. Um, so, and then, which I would say, the let's say, which tool was originally developed as an internal tool and then later became Power BI's foundation, one of the stellar products by Microsoft.
I'm trying to remember the name because I used to work with it. Power BI has been around for 12 years, or what was it, 13 years? So I got to go through my memory books. Uh, I'm thinking well, there was another tool, but reporting services certainly was a predecessor or precursor to the things within Power BI. But there was another web version of a reporting tool. Now you're really racking my brains here. I'm going to go with reporting services, but I don't think that's right.
You're right, it's not right. So it is actually Power Pivot. Power Pivot was it was developed by the Excel team, and that became actually the foundation of Power BI. And that's how it really started. But Power BI also had a lot of components that were also acqui-hired, you can say. This is what Amir Nads actually talk about sometimes. Amir Nads, who's the CTO of Microsoft Fabric, he talks about it because he was brought in by, like, used to work at another company who had some product, and they were brought in, and that eventually all rolled up into the Power BI.
Interesting side fact: there used to be something called the business scorecard, which is a culmination of different web technologies for reporting. And this is way before Power BI, but it would report on KPIs and look at identifying ROI on a KPI. And it was a whole business dashboard. So
Hmm.
pre Power BI days.
There's just so much history,
Yeah.
unbelievable, right? 50 years, and there are things that I'm learning about it. never knew that Microsoft did. It's just incredible. Like, there's so much facts, like Bill Gates actually invested in Apple and things like that. That's the mind blowing facts. But anyway, this episode is not dedicated to that one, so we'll get back to things. Um, let's talk about what's happening around Jamie in the AI world.
Yeah, so a lot certainly has transpired over the past week. So the threat of Skynet, if you've watched any of the Terminator movies, certainly is
Who has
on
not watched? I want to know who has not watched.
yeah, no, really. In all seriousness, we're really talking about artificial general intelligence, and there's a couple of other terms coming out, like artificial super intelligence or ASI. So, we're at a stage right now where we're not, quote unquote, at AGI just yet, but we know it's coming. Whether or not it's tomorrow or 10 years from now, I think it's irrelevant on when it's actually going to be. It's about what are we doing to prepare for AGI. So the whole concept of, are we in a position to be secured enough, having the right safeguards in place, is a critical area that a lot of people are focusing on. Well, this past week, Google DeepMind, they actually released a security paper focused on AGI development. Let me bring up a slide here and we can talk to that. So AGI, again, when we hit it, who knows, but there's underlying assumptions within this paper. By the way, if you've got, a spare couple hours to read, this paper is 145, 146 pages. Obviously, you could throw it into Copilot and or your favorite chat engine and get a summary of it. But there's core fundamental assumptions in this paper. Obviously, the thought that AGI will be reached is key. And when AGI is reached, that will surpass human levels of thinking. And the thought here, the way this paper positions it, again, they don't necessarily say it's going to be, delivered this year, next year, but it's within the decade. So that could be, anywhere between tomorrow and 10 years from now. So what another assumption that this paper makes is the progress that we're going to make is going to dramatically increase in terms of the research that's ongoing now to create a rapid feedback loop that will enable AGI. So again, the assumption is that the work that's happening, whether it's at DeepMind or elsewhere in these fundamental or foundational labs, it's going to get us to AGI. And there's going to be improvements in terms of gradual improvements. It's not going to be like tomorrow someone's like, hey, I just reached AGI. There's going to be certain steps that these things are going to take. And I think that's kind of evident in what we've seen just over the last couple of months. The reasoner models, whether or not it's DeepSeek or O3, Google just put out their, semi-reasoner / GPT model with Gemini 2.5 Pro that we talked about. Claude Anthropic Claude's got there within 3.7. So we've seen these reasoners. We've also seen these KUA or the computer use models also come into play. We'll talk about one of those today as well. But we've seen strides. So the thought behind this paper is that, we're going to continue to see improvements along the way from any and all of these different foundational models. But what's interesting is they break down how to think about this rapid development and how to safeguard. So the paper outlines a framework for ensuring that these AGI systems remain beneficial and secure to us. And like I said, sort of the pun up front, they don't turn into Skynet and turn against us as humans. So what's interesting is they break this down into 4 categories: misuse, misalignment, mistakes, and structural risks. So the first one, actually, let me cover the last 2 because they're less concerned about the mistakes and structural risks. So what is that? So The mistakes are, can a system, an agent do something, do harm that wasn't necessarily its intent? And again, I'm talking about these things as if they have a brain, because they will have a brain. They're going to be able to reach that level of thinking that we have. Do people try to do harm? Sure. Do people do harm without them realizing they're doing it? Of course they do. That's going to be no different than what these agentic systems can do. So the yes, they talk about ways that we can limit the potential impact from systems that make mistakes, but that's not the core focus of this. The other side of it is structural risk. These are things like, all right, if we create a multi-agentic system where, again, we've got, anywhere between, 2, 3 agents to maybe a couple hundred, is there a potential for risk in the way that those things were stitched together? Again, it's not the fault of the agent. And again, it seems odd to me, I'm talking about an agent as if it was a person, but it's not the fault of the agent. It's actually the fault of the human that derived the agent, or the agent itself based upon instructions that was given when it creates additional agents that it would need on the fly. So those are two areas, the mistakes and the quote unquote structural risks. The other ones are a little bit more interesting. So the misuse. So this is where misuse of agents by bad actors. These are going to be people who want to do harm to others. Think of cyber attacks as an example. So what Google is pronouncing within this framework is that there should be proactive threat modeling. There should be capability evaluations of the things that are put in. Obviously, red teaming. I mean, that's key. A key principle at Microsoft around responsible AI is to actually do this red teaming, quote unquote, stress testing of these systems. But there should also be stringent access controls also imposed, and also monitoring techniques imposed on these agents to, again, prevent misuse. The way that I like to think about this is, if someone's building some stuff, do you take it for granted? No, you're going to want to put safeguards in place to ensure, again, yes, I'm doing the proper threat modeling. I'm doing the proper stress testing of security mechanisms. And I've got things that can look after those agents as they're running. So that's one major one. Misalignment is just the opposite. So you have misuse by humans, but misalignment is basically, are these systems going to act on their own where they are knowingly intent to causing harm, contrary to whatever the developer, and I don't even want to use developer in that sense, because we talk about the ability for people to develop agents without coding. So I don't want to limit this just to a developer mindset. So it's anybody that's going to create an agent. So we want to make sure that the AI system itself that's developed by whomever, there's safeguards in place around that. So this is where they talk about amplifying the oversight for those models. So there should be human overseers, and I feel like I'm talking about some science fiction book, but the overseers should look at what these agents are doing in the concepts around understanding of the focus of that agent, as well as how well is that agent aligning to the complex models that it was designed to do in the first place. The other thing is that there should be robust training strategies that are developed inside of that agent to understand if it's providing itself to unfair scenarios, even when it wasn't meant for that. So again, it goes back to, how are you using the agent? Are there things that can not only go into the underlying quote unquote reasoning model, but what that agent's doing? So are there specific enough strategies to ensure that it's aligned? Last but not least, there should be system level securities. Again, this goes into the misalignment piece, but this goes back into access control, things that can and should detect potential harm within real time for when those agents are running. So you put that all together, and that's what this thing is. It's really a technical focused framework paper to, interpret these systems, provide some level of clarity that may not be there today based upon uncertainty, based upon these AI systems. The other thing that I want to make clear on what they put out and what DeepMind Labs put out is that this is not a de facto. Like, they're not saying, hey, this is the end all in terms of this paper. It's really as a starting point. It's not a final solution for them. It's really meant to be as a roadmap, urging the global community to work in a collaborative manner to help with this quote unquote secured alignment that everybody should be undertaking. So anyway, that's the paper in a nutshell. Like I said, 145 pages. If you got nothing to do over the weekend, go read our show notes, and you'll find the paper there.
That's, I think, I would say, a good forward-looking kind of framework, because AGI definitely makes people nervous about it. And I think in the tradition of DeepMind publishing research paper, it's a good one. But here's the thing, Jamie, I have read some report that DeepMind is also actually tightening their nose on how they and how soon do they publish the research paper ahead of the very innovative findings. So, for example, everybody know that very famous paper on the transformer. The title "All You Need Is Attention." Um, that paper ultimately triggered all these LLM development that we see, right? So it's essentially created a completely new wave of the AI, right? And that was a paper by Google, research paper.
Yep.
And I think there was a realization by Google that maybe we should not have released that because everybody took a jump ahead of them. And so there are reports that they are actually making sure that not everything is published ahead of them. Researchers may not get a privilege of publishing every single thing, right? Something that is considered strategic or commercial interest may not be published by DeepMind. And the other thing I also heard that they are also making sure that there is aggressive non-compete clauses signed by the researchers, because it's all about the talent right now, right? I mean, and we have seen it, right? Whoever comes out first in the market, and that depends on what talent and research that you have, you take the lead. Essentially, that's what is happening. So, a little bit change in the attitude from DeepMind, I would say, which is not surprising, honestly.
Yep.
Okay, and just quickly, OpenAI, Sam Altman actually published some data points about what has happened after the recent native image generation capability that they launched, which really went viral. And they say that they just saw record-breaking user growth following their latest rollout. It created a GPU capacity challenges for the company. They say that the ChatGPT added just like 1 million users in the past hour.
Wow.
In the hour, right? And they compared to 2 years ago when it took them 5 days after the new ChatGPT was gone viral to add the same number of users. Unbelievable, right? 1 million users in an hour. Sometime, and think about it, right? I mean, it's nothing, right? It's just a simple native image generation, but that is actually very powerful. I mean, in fact, people are doing all kind of amazing things, like not just Ghibli. I know, remember, Jimmy, we had a guest actually, Harvey Castro, and he started kind of a mini trend where he's creating actually the toy packages version of yourself. He has shared that prompt, and a lot of people are sharing those and creating their own toy version that comes in a packet. That's one. And then people are doing all kind of things in different art style, and people are even showing the examples of how you can actually create a simple image of a receipt from restaurant or wherever the expenses are, and how that can be abused. So it's incredible, right? The realistic rendering of those images.
Yep.
It's no way you can make a difference.
Yeah, and personal experience using that. I mean, obviously, we showed last episode doing a Gimby style image of myself on a vacation, but as everyone knows, I'm into the weather, and I do have some pages that I use to inform the public of impending severe weather. And I've used this a couple of times already to create infographics on, hey, this is what to expect, and supplied some images of radar and give it some summary of what I think is going to happen. And it creates beautiful images with text that look professionally done. Like I'm not a graphic artist, and this thing came out great. So, and by the way, when I did that, I definitely ran into delays. I got, the pop-up message every once in a while saying, too busy, please try again. A little frustrating, but to your point, yeah, there's a lot of people banging away at that thing.
That is true, and it is addictive, like I have been doing it, right? I mean, anybody who shares a picture, I just turn that into a Ghibli style and share it back, and people are like getting frustrated with me right now, but it's so much fun, to be honest. Okay, talking about the graphics and images, I'm sure more things are happening in that world as well.
Yeah. So there was a recent release by Runway Labs. I don't know how many, I'm assuming a lot of people know about Runway Labs. If not, they are one of the major players in image and video generation. This Gen-4 model, which is what they put out, super powerful. I did have a chance to play around with it a little bit. And I'll show you something that I did very quick just this morning. But what's important about this model, and whenever you do video or creation with video, I mean, obviously there's Sora out there, and there's a couple of other models that are able to do this. And, again, we've covered some of those in the past. But what makes this Gen-4 model from Runway Labs stand out, in my opinion, is its ability to think about world consistency and the items and things around it. How I'll give away a little bit of this. If you go to the Runway Labs site, they've got a couple of video clips that they've created, and you can actually see that here. This one's called The Herd, and they've got a really cute little cartoony thing called The Flame. But when I talk about realistic consistency in the world, they showed this person, this guy, I don't think they named him, but they show him looking at cattle, and you see his reflection in the cattle's eye. So just that talks about like just the real world physics and the way that things work. What's also impressive about this, it's around the narrative capabilities, meaning, and when I talk about narrative, it's not voice, but it's about having consistency in the characters from a scene to the next. So if you're creating videos, and if everyone thinks about it, I'm going to create a 5-second video, right? If you've got Sora, you can do up a 10-second video. Well, what if I have different scenes? Like literally, all right, here's this person, this, the person that you're seeing on the screen, but now you've got a different scene. The characteristics of that person should be consistent from scene to scene. So in other video or image generation models, you don't have that consistency. Things might look different. If you're creating a movie or if you're creating some longer video, you don't want your subjects to change during each different section, unless they're doing some aging or something like that. But you want that consistency. So it keeps the consistency in this Gen-4 model between the characters, locations, and objects across different scenes. So that's powerful. So consistent characters, consistent objects, you're able to get coverage of the thing, whatever that thing you're focusing on, from different angles. So if I have an object, I can get a viewpoint from this way, from below. It doesn't matter. So it's really bringing in a 360, three-dimensional capability into what it creates. So as I mentioned already, like it takes into consideration the physical world. So it actually models what is, physically capable based upon physics into real world scenarios based upon these based upon the things that you're creating. So what's also important here is that they have partnerships already identified. So with Lionsgate, they're exploring, ways that they could change and adapt future filmmaking. They're going to be a programming partner in the Tribeca Film Festival, or they were back in 2024, and that's continuing on with future festivals from Tribeca, and then just different partnerships around expanding this creative horizon. So I think I've talked about it enough. Let me show you some stuff around this, because it is kind of cool. This is one of the things where you can just get sucked in and just play around with this, because it is quote unquote the cool factor in it. So let me explain as I get my screen up. Let me explain what you're going to be seeing here. So this is the Runway generation lab environment. So obviously I skipped a couple of things. I logged into the system and I went into the tooling. There's some more sophisticated stuff where I did not sign up on because I didn't feel like spending $100 a month on this. But they have something called image framing. So I did one frame, but you could actually supply multiple images of your own, and it will create videos off of that. So I literally could have put an image of an inanimate object and prompted it to say, you should do this, this, and that, but put it in the scene of another picture that I put. You can see that being demonstrated in some of the videos if you go to their site. So that being said, let me show you some of this Gen-4 video image generation. So this is literally a picture from my vacation from just a couple weeks ago from Jamaica. This was me out in a kayak in the middle of the Caribbean. Wish I was still there. Gorgeous. If you ever have a chance to go, definitely go. But here's a kayak, right? You can see what I told it as a prompt. Have a shark water ski across the beach scene in front of the ocean kayak. The motion should be from left to right, and the shark should wave to the kayak when it's directly in front of the kayak. Now, this is my first shot at the prompts. What I'm about to show you, it did pretty good, but it didn't do everything exactly what I thought it was going to do. So this took maybe about 2 minutes to generate the video. I'm going to play this for you. Hopefully it comes out decently. This is only 5 seconds. Here comes the shark. I didn't ask it to do a little boy, but it had the boy in this thing as well. So if you notice what the shark is doing, it's waving to the other person. So that other person's in a kayak. It didn't recognize the fact that there's a kayak in my picture. So probably with some additional prompting, it would do that. But what I want you to notice is the wave action in the water. My original picture is just a picture. There's no movement of the water. So there's a couple of things here. So the water is actually moving before the shark and before this boy in his kayak comes in. So you can see from a physical, and this is why I wanted to point this out, the physics are actually being adhered to in terms of like the wave being generated from the shark and then the wave being generated from the boy, which overcomes my my ocean kayak. So again, pretty good for just a 2-sentence prompt. Yes, there's things that I would change, and I'm not sure if this little kid's wearing a shark suit, because I know most humans don't have fins at the back of their out of their back. So again, like I said, simple little test, but I thought it was pretty cool what could be created aligning with the physics of the quote unquote real world.
Seems to be getting the physics right, but probably failing in the biology.
Yeah.
Like
I said, if I wanted to spend some more time with additional prompts in this, I'm sure I could have gotten something that was a little bit maybe exactly what I was looking for.
But it's a good demonstration of, I think because physics has been actually a big challenge. In fact, it reminds me, Jamie, I'm a Pixar nerd. Used to love those short films that they used to throw, right? Because they would experiment with shadows, lightning, and even physics and things like that, right? So they used to do the similar kind of thing, right? Of course, they would animate everything. but they used to develop new techniques and then incorporate them into movies. But yeah, I mean, like it's amazing, right? I mean, I think the physics was, I agree totally. The wave looked really realistic, which many times, until last year, I mean, these platforms used to miss those physics part of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back, I mean, the thing that hit the internet by storm, I guess it was maybe only about 18 months ago, was Will Smith eating spaghetti. It looked kind of hokey, all that kind of stuff. So just where we've gone in a short period of time with video generation is astounding.
True. It's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about a few more things. Jamie, you referred to this AWS actually unveiling the Nova Act, which is really an AI agent, right? It's a computer use agent which can control a web browser, and this is something, like it's not something completely new, because OpenAI has their operator, and even before that, Anthropic actually released their agent, computer use agent, right? Um, and even, right, I think Google is developing now. Copilot also is having those abilities as well. So it's not something very new, and it does something very similar, right? It can complete a task. It can complete tasks in the web browsers, like submitting out of office requests, managing events, calendars. That's what it can do. So it's part of the Nova families of models that Amazon has, and it's a new AI model which is going to perform actions within the web browsers. Now it's a research preview, and but there is a Nova Act SDK which is also available for developers to experiment with. I think one of the thing that is interesting in this one is that you can use that with the Alexa, right? If people have the Alexa Plus, so there is an integration, and it is already being used in the Alexa Plus to navigate the internet and completing the task on behalf of users. And I think the devices that they have, they seem like that Amazon wants to develop this capability so that it can be integrated in several of their devices, maybe in Fire TV, right? But to be honest, it's very hard. Actually, I have some Fire TV devices as well. It's very hard. They have a browser called Silk. And it's very hard to actually browse. So I think this probably could be a great feature actually in those Fire TV devices, and of course in the Alexa and bunch of other I don't know, like Kindle or something. That would that make sense or not? But this, I think, makes sense for Amazon to have it so that it can be done in a lot of devices as well.
Yeah, and it's like you said, I think this is certainly a research area that all of these foundational labs are doing, and to me, they almost have to go down this path because this will take agents to the next level. Granted, we're still at the beginning stages of agents, but we want them to be able to act as if a human, or taking some human actions. So this is what I would believe would be what every company is going to be doing. And the points that you make around the practical application or the applicability to things like the Alexa integration, that could be a real bona fide benefit to Amazon AWS. So it being able to navigate the internet and complete tasks, and maybe automatically add stuff to the Amazon shopping cart, as an example. So there's definitely a strong use case for whether it's from Nova Act or any of the other players that you had mentioned previously.
Yep.
So let's talk about some things that were just announced this past week over at FabCon, which is the Microsoft Fabric conference that's put on by a third party, but there's a lot of new announcements that were made at FabCon. So there's so many different announcements that were made that we don't have enough time to cover it, nor is it directly related to AI for all the things, but there certainly are some key aspects that have an impact on building AI applications, building agents, so on and so forth. So let's talk about them. So we mentioned data agents in 2 episodes ago. So that was, again, a key highlight inside of FabCon. But one of the things that was positioned in this is that the data agents, other than the fact that you can go against any of the data that's within Fabric, let's say as within a lakehouse inside of Fabric, but that data agent can be now coupled with Azure AI Foundry to connect your quote unquote AI applications, your agents, to the data that is stored within inside of Fabric. So this allows you to create connected, customized conversational agents that speak directly to that data in Fabric. So that's key. The other part of that, sort of loosely connected, but if you're starting to expose data, corporate data, you kind of want to make sure that that's secured, right? So one of the things that was announced was additional security layers inside of Fabric for row level security and object level security, specifically column level security. Instead of putting that at each individual workload, whether it's a data warehouse or a lake house or within the Custo database, as an example, what Microsoft did within Fabric is to push that down to the underlying storage. That specifically is one lake. The idea there is that if you do that security definition once within one lake, which is the low level, well, then it automatically gets applied to any and all of those other areas that would be used, including things like Power BI that might be using data that is being leveraged within the lakehouse. So this is really one lake security that allows for, again, row level, column level that I can define based upon roles, aka aligning with users or groups of users. So that's number two. Number three, and this is a big one, within Fabric, there are co-pilots. There's co-pilots inside of Fabric for Power BI to develop reports, analyze data. There's co-pilots for generating Python code within notebooks. There's there's co-pilots to help generate transformations within Azure Data Factory. I can go on and on. There's multiple co-pilots inside of Fabric. Prior to FabCon, you could only use those co-pilots if you're at a higher level pricing tier, what was called an F64 SKU. Well, what was now announced was all the way down to the lowest level or entry level SKU for Fabric. You can now use these co-pilots and AI capabilities. So put it bluntly, this is going to open up the ability for more customers, more clients, more organizations to use these AI-based capabilities inside of Fabric. There was other things announced, things like migrations from older platforms or existing platforms like Synapse, Gen-2 environments to bring it into Fabric. Again, think about ways of expanding use of data for AI. So if you've got some stuff in Synapse, you can now have a migration path that's based upon tooling to bring it into Fabric. There's other enhancements as it relates to the underlying platform, things like support for a command line interface. There's CI/CD enhancements. But one thing I want to call out on the platform is the ability for users to create data functions. So if I think about this, I can create a user-defined function that will enable, basically developers to create custom business logic inside of Fabric. And if I do that, and if I have that coupled with, let's say, something inside of a lakehouse, and then I create a data agent on top of that, and then share that through Foundry, well, now I've just created something that can help in workflows and streamlining that development to bring that directly into an agent where I now have that base, or at least a core business logic, being housed within inside of Fabric. So again, a lot of great things inside of Fabric that were announced. We can go on and on and on. I don't know if you want to bring up some things, some other areas.
I think it's important to understand that. Look, the data and AI are really inseparable. To really to really harness the full power of AI, the data is really the foundation, and you need an AI data foundation, and that's what Fabric does. In fact, I consider the Fabric actually as a AI platform, given the way it uses AI in a lot of its functions, like, and it's embedded within Copilot, and it also uses that in lots of functions. So it's really inseparable, right? From my perspective, if you look at the Microsoft platforms, whether it's a Copilot, M365 Copilot, Copilot Studio, Azure AI Foundry, or the Fabric and the GitHub Copilot, they all are part of the AI platforms continuum. And you need to use actually all of them if you want to build an end-to-end capability in the AI. One is not enough, right? And because they target different user, they have different use cases, etc. And several things are important, right? But when it comes to data, the security is also important. Some of the announcements were about the one lake security, because one lake is really like a one drive of that data where the data sits in, and then you can use it, right? Whether it's from, you can use the same data outside the Fabric from the AI Foundry, you can use the same data within one lake from Copilots in Power BI, or you can even integrate that. So they also announced about, you can actually access the data from Excel, whatever data that you have in the one lake. But before you do all of that, you need actually a security model. So there was announcements around the row level security as well as the column level security. So you can restrict and make those information protected, which you don't want certain users to actually access. Um, and with that security model, it becomes easier. Now you can expose that data confidently and comfortably to whether it's outside the Fabric in Excel or Teams, or within the Fabric in Power BI and other compute engine. So I think that's another thing. There are other things like you can develop some user data functions that you can actually call out. It's like creating your own functions wrappers and then calling them out within the Fabric data science and engineering workflows, as well as like there are other things like, for example, you could do something like semantic model that you have in the Power BI. It was already announced earlier as well, but you can do direct data lake queries on that semantic model. It's an amazingly evolving ecosystem. Whenever we talk with our customer, we realize that how important the data is to any of the AI development. In fact, it's a very famous quote, right? And it is so true. Most of the time, your AI strategy discussion will turn into a data strategy discussion. So, and that's what is relevant for any AI. Okay. Yeah, and we're not going to go into deep into every announcement which was made at the Fabric conference. Encourage people to actually look into all kind of announcements that were made. The blogs are there, and we will put the link into the show note as well. Okay. So, Jamie, what else do you have?
Yeah, so this one's of the I'll call it interesting tool that I just came across. I wouldn't use this in a business sense, by the way, because I don't know if the data is protected, but if you want to compare the responses from multiple foundational models in one fall swoop, there's a company called internet.io. So what this will do is your query or your prompt, it'll go fire that off, but then it fires that prompt off across many different models, and then it returns it so you can compare. Figured the best way, this one would be visual. Let me just show you real quick. Let me present my screen again. So in this case, I already did my prompt. Again, like I said, I'm into weather. So this prompt was, what are the factors needed in the atmosphere to initiate thunderstorm development? How critical is CAPE and dew point? Those are things that you need for generation of severe storms, and more specifically tornado genesis. So I fired off this prompt, and what you could see is it ran that against OpenAI GPT-4o, Anthropic, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, Meta Llama 3.1, the 405B model, specifically Grok 2 latest, Cohere, Mistral, and Perplexity. So same exact prompt issued multiple times across these, and you could see the output. What was interesting to me was the Cohere one. I think it was Cohere. Sorry, maybe it was Mistral. Came back with a slightly better response. Maybe it was just the way I did the prompt as compared to others. So it's a interesting little tool, and that's how I would call it, to kind of compare. And as you notice, it's doing the searching. They do have some built-in AI agents as well that will run some stuff. But if you sign up, basically, this is free, at least from what I've seen thus far. So it will go out, and you can specify what models to actually use in this. So if I set this up, I could say, well, what models, what do I care about most? And you could rearrange and order these things. So again, it's a quick way of maybe ascertaining which model you believe is best based upon the responses. And then, for me, I would be like, all right, well, for this thing, maybe I want to continue on using the Anthropic Claude model or, the GPT-4o. What I have not been able to, there's nothing like I can change the OpenAI model, so you're kind of limited based upon these. But again, interesting little tool. I throw it out there for people to potentially use. So I'll probably be doing a segment like this. I don't know if it'll be every episode, but if I come across an interesting little tool, I'll kind of show it real quick, like I'm doing now.
Great. I think it's always good to see how the AI is being used there, and I think it's just phenomenal, right? I mean, I've also come across some of those tools, and it's just very refreshing to see how it is being used. Um, all right, let's talk about it. We started with the 50 years at Microsoft team, and in as part of that celebration, there is like there is actually more thing that Microsoft is doing, and they're attempting a Guinness World Record. Okay, and this is in terms of uh, like making sure that people, whoever is interested in the AI, can actually learn and enjoy the benefits of AI. So as part of that, Microsoft has done this AI. What you can see here on the screen, that you can go to this website and register for AI skills and learning. And it's like 50 days of AI discovery and learning, that allows you to actually, you can essentially, there are like over the 50 days from April 8th to March 28th, there are tons of things that you can learn at Microsoft Learn, which is an official, you can say documentation for Microsoft technologies, everything Azure, everything Microsoft is available there. And if you browse this website, you will find different sorts of sessions. So it's not just for technical people, whether you're a tech professional or whether you're a business professional or you're a student, business leader, you will find those sessions everywhere. And you can go there, you can have your own AI uh, journey of AI learning, and then you can learn that. So that's one part. The second part is that on April 8th, specifically on April 8th, it has to be within that 24 hours of April 8th, there is certain timeline, which is like, for example, 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Time and ending at 11 o'clock, or 4 o'clock Pacific Time. Within that 24-hour period, we are attempting a Guinness World Records for the largest, like most users to take an online multi-level artificial intelligence lesson in 24 hours. So that is what you see here on the screen as being highlighted. And there are 3 days and some hours left for you to register. It would be fantastic because this is going to be a part of the Guinness World Record attempt. I'm excited. I want to be part of this. I always wanted to have some sort of a Guinness World Record, and this allows me to actually be part of this. There will be a badge that you can download, when you attempt this, which will basically highlight that okay, you were part of that. And once the Guinness World Record is given, there will be you can return to that page and you can get another badge saying that okay, I was part of this Guinness World Record, right? So it's a fantastic experience, and of course you learn things, right? So that's really it is, and it is free. It's complimentary. You can also actually host your own learning party, like on April 8th. You can register if you have a nonprofit, if you want to create a session of learning, and within that 24 hours of April 8th, you can do that as well. You can have your own learning party kind of events also organized. So I would suggest that it's like once in a lifetime opportunity. Everybody should just go there, not just for a learning experience, but also just an experience by a company like Microsoft.
I signed up. I'll be part of the Guinness World Record. Hopefully, it's broken.
Yes, I hope so. I don't know. Is there a Guinness World Record already? I don't know what was that and who created that, but I am hopeful that we will break that.
Yeah, there seems to be a Guinness World Record for everything, so I'm sure there's something in there. I don't know what we have to break, but in terms of a number, but I'll be one of the many, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, we will get that, and we will proudly show our badge.
Yep.
Okay, great. I think great episode again, Jamie. Lots of learning, and hope everybody will benefit from it as well. I can tell you one thing, Jamie, my own experience. Ever since we have started doing this podcast and the YouTube channel, I feel very relevant to all the discussion. In the last 1 year, wherever I go, I never feel that, I don't know something, right? Because AI is such a rapidly evolving thing. Now I feel that, no matter what the topic is, I can always be part of that discussion, right? I can meaningfully contribute to it just because this kind of like this kind of channel and podcast. And of course, we spend a lot more hours in preparation for that. But whoever is listening to it within that 1 hour or lesser, you can actually make sure that you are up to date and you will never feel like you are not part of the discussion.
Right. I mean, that goes back to why we started this, podcast, webcast, whatever you want to call it in the first place. It's to help educate and keep people up to date. And by doing that or producing, these episodes, what does that do for us? Well, we're getting that knowledge. We're getting it in a little bit broader sense because, like you said, we have to do that research. But I can tell you this: like without this podcast, I mean, yeah, we'd probably turn to something else, and hopefully, we're providing value to people where we're condensing a lot of things. But the preparation that I know you and I do to get to produce these things, it keeps us up to date. And I kind of think of this as the funnel where we're at the top of the funnel trying to amass all these things, because I don't know if people realize, but we go through a bunch of different stories and we're like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, or let's cover this next week. So out of the whatever it is, 5 or 6 different things that we cover in an episode, we're probably looking at like 20 or 25 different things, if not more. We're sifting through that. So we're getting more knowledge. So to me, at least, without this episode or without this podcast, I don't think I'd be in a position where I'm at right now to really have a full sense of everything that's going on, at least not a broad sense of, all the different technologies, all the different companies. So anyway, probably a little bit on a soapbox, but this has been great for me just to get immersed in it. And again, I go back to hopefully we're providing value to folks that are hopefully still listening at this point, but providing value of giving you curated information that we spent some time going through and thinking, at least from our perspective, that this is going to be important and impactful for you. So anyway,
Absolutely. I mean, no, it's just and that's the thing, right? I mean, a lot of people actually they feel overwhelmed, right? Okay, I mean, AI is just everywhere. I don't know where to start. How much to do. You don't need to just pick something. If you are particularly interested in the corporate and your career, etc., then this is a show for you. Because we cover all of that thing. We will not cover every single consumer oriented thing, maybe sometimes not everything small thing that Meta or TikTok is also doing, but anything that we find is relevant for a corporate employee or somebody who's interested in transforming their career, then this is definitely a show curated for you.
Yep.
Okay. And we hope that everybody benefit just like we are benefiting from it. And talk soon again.
Talk soon.
Have
See
fun.
you.
Jimmy.